anyone here that's watching now. Welcome to the Urban Media Show.
Talking about things getting worse. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about situation in Germany, for example, right? In Germany, they've already opened up detention centres for people who refuse to quarantine.
Wow. Sounds a lot like communism, doesn't it?
Well, it's like, if they can do it there, they can do it here.
We do have to fight them a bit more clever now. Let's say they've kind of made it really hostile with their media. I mean, especially here with the Bournemouth SUssd, some of the things they've been printing the last couple of weeks since the video went viral of the girls getting arrested. It's just absolutely shocking, some of the things they've written. Like I say, the latest one yesterday, they have basically come out and said that 2 police officers have caught COVID from the protests that they attended on the 9th of January. It's unreal. But the police officers are unnamed as well. So it's again, the same with the statements that they brought out the day after the day of the demonstration on the 9th of January. They are it's just words backed up with no evidence whatsoever. And I say we have asked them to provide evidence of their allegations of why they believe that we staged events, and they have come up with no evidence. But what we have got is a media arm called the Bournemouth SUssd, and all they've come out with is more lies because they have no evidence to back up. They have backup words, basically.
Did the girls even, what's it called? Did they even ask them, like, what act are you arresting me under? Because they can't arrest you under a regulation, because it's unlawful kidnap.
And they do, though, Rusty. That's the thing, mate. That's what they do. And it's like, it doesn't matter what you say to them, they do it. I mean, this is if the arguments I've got with some of the information coming out with advising and with common law and stuff like that. And I'm not saying common law is not a feasible way of fighting these things, but at the same time, when we were on the coach trips, which Sir Ben was also on as well, we had ladies who were presenting their common law cards in the pieces, and they still put the handcuffs on her. So for me, also with the common law as well. I've been looking into it for 4 or 5 years. I still am not totally confident in confronting a policeman or something with this common law stuff. Now, how do you expect someone who's looking at it for the first time in their life to be confident and use it in an effective way? It's just not realistic, and that's why I always kind of steer away from common law. I'm not saying it can't work, and I'm sure it has done, but yeah, that's my view as well.
Well, I remember sat behind Darren, and I was filming him when he was reading the common law to a police officer, and the police officer said to him, "Thank you for all of that. The time is such and such. I'm now placing you under arrest." Done. That was it. They didn't care. There was another friend of ours who had a card with it written on. She was showing it to the officer. She got taken off the coach and arrested. That was it. Nobody cared. There was no human rights involved. The inspector who came on, a guy called Chief Inspector Gilbert, he came on and he was actually asked, as he got on the coach, he was asked, "Mike, you know this, are you working under your oath today, officer?" And he didn't answer.
With the police like that, the best way to fight them is not to sign anything. That's the first right, and that's the first thing you should do, is just not sign anything. By law, you don't have to. If they start saying to you, "Well, you have to sign this to get your goods back," that's theft then.
I've not signed for anything, Rusty, and I've got 2 charges here of holding a gathering of more than 30 and being in a gathering more than 2. So
basically, right there, then you can take them to court right now, and you can basically
all this stuff online. What they say, it's not all. It's not. It's a lot of it's bullshit, mate. I'm telling you, when you get to court and these things, and you're actually in court, it's not like that, mate. They destroy you. They absolutely destroy you. Unless you.
Wow, I still haven't had my fine through the door.
Nor have I. I started 2 months ago, mate.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah, I think. Have you had yours for you, Sven?
You what, mate?
You had your fine through?
I still haven't got my fine through at all. I don't know what's going on there because everybody got fines at different times. Some people got charged with different things. So they didn't even have the stories lined up for all different people on the coach, for example. One person was getting charged for this, the other one was being accused of that, the other one was that, yet they were all arrested for the same thing, not giving their details. How can you arrest someone for not giving your name and address unless you're suspecting them of committing a crime? That means sitting together on a coach was a crime, but it wasn't at that time. It was only a regulation. I was in Bournemouth Gardens, and the copper didn't, until I mentioned it to him, he didn't once ask me, what were you doing in the gardens? He didn't once ask me why aren't I wearing a face mask. All he said was, we've seen you hanging around, and we see you were filming us, which is not illegal. You're allowed to film in a public place, which people have to understand. You're allowed to film. You're allowed to film. Your phones have got gadgets on them called cameras. You're allowed to use them. Otherwise, Samsung will have to start rebuilding all their cameras, and so will Apple, right? So, and they didn't really have a reason to question me, and all they could do was give me a Section 35, right? Which is ridiculous. And then I was banned for 12 hours for going into Bournemouth. What for? For what? Was doing nothing wrong. But the thing was, the copper couldn't admit to me that they had me because, of course, they were suspecting we were all going to meet up and do a demo. But so what? I wasn't doing anything wrong, so it doesn't matter what you thought I was going to do in an hour's time. The fact of the matter is, in that moment in time, I was committing no crime, so what are you stopping me for?
Almost, they're accusing us of stating it. They strategically placed their policemen in the gardens, in the square, at the pier, at the town hall, so they caught us all coming in.
At that time, I was in the gardens, and Peter was getting questioned for wearing a banner around him saying, look after your bodies. It was nuts. He was playing football with some kids in the park, right? And then I saw him getting questioned, so I sort of thought, well, I'll film this. So I started filming it, and then the police, who a few days later accused us of endangering them with our breath, right? They came to me, asking me questions. It's mental.
I want to see doctors' proof of them having COVID-19.
I want them to prove that it was us. As this is audio that's only going to be put on this, I will put the pictures in the background of how busy the beach was, because I don't know if you noticed, but I don't know if you've seen Sven, but Sam posted some pictures of the promenade of the 9th and how busy it was. But I'll post them in the background of how busy that beach was and how ridiculous it was to single us out, and also how ridiculous it was to write that article yesterday. Alleging that 2 police officers have caught COVID off people at that demonstration. It's borderline, like I say, what is it? Borderline discrimination, isn't it?
Discrimination, mate. I said on my video on Sunday, I did a video a day later, right, called The Local News, and I said it in there that when you got a chief inspector saying to the Bournemouth Echo that we were endangering the public and his officers for interacting with them, that is clear what he's saying with that, and that is discrimination. You can't do that. What? There were loads of people walking around without face masks that day, and they were just as close to the police.
See, they're trying to whip up some sort of hatred towards us. It's disturbing, to be honest.
I did a bit of research today.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll get to exactly what I mean and the point I'm making with this. So up to on the 18th, which was yesterday, right? Yes, 3,984 people were admitted to hospital with symptoms of COVID, or they found out they had COVID positive, right? Mm-hmm. There are 1,257 hospitals in England, and it works out. It works out 3.1 people per hospital in the whole of the UK.
I know what you're going on about. Is that about the one? Someone's in the hospital every 30 seconds.
Well, it's all nonsense. And the thing is, right, and here's the kicker, when they say admissions to hospital, admission doesn't mean overnight stay. I looked it up. Admission means you go in, you get seen to, and you leave. Outpatients, mainly outpatients. It's not people lying in COVID wards, fill up to the walls and full up to the windows. That's not happening. It's not what we see. And when the police inspector, Chief Inspector Vaughan, the guy from Dorset, when he says they can't find hospital beds, and they can't find ambulances, well, guess what, mate? I go past Poole and Bournemouth Hospital every single day, and there are fleets of ambulances parked outside there. So what on earth is that guy talking about? What's he talking about? He's lying. He's a liar, and I'll tell it to his face. He's lying. Totally blatant lies. It winds me up because, you know, I don't like liars. Why are nurses going on about how their hospitals are packed when they know they're not?
And then you see them all over TikTok.
It's so easy to decipher as well, like with the stats. It's all about the testing programs. And if you look at the graphs and the testing programs, despite they mirror each other. And then if you look at the death stats as well, on the 10th of August, they changed the way they count stats. 28 days of a positive test, if you die, you are basically counted as a stat. So if you look at the graphs from 28 days after August the 10th, the spikes in death, the spike in the death count goes up. And these graphs coincide with the testing programs and the way they are recording stats. It has absolutely nothing to do with more people dying. And people just need to look at these things, and it's really not that hard to work out. Yeah, no, did you see the Telegraph article the other day where they were gaslighting gaslighting women to freeze their eggs just in case their vaccine could possibly damage their fertility? It's unbelievable. You read the
Unbelievable.
And why? And people are reading that, and people aren't asking questions. It's like what Gav said yesterday when we were talking, right? When we had a go at this, he was saying, you know, this whole virus thing is a smokescreen for something much, much, much bigger. By the way, when did that flip ever happen to people starting to wear it all on the streets? When did that start happening?
Right, okay, right. To me to tell you, yeah, the thing is, where I'm in the younger generation, yeah, I know how easy it is to become into this mass society. So trap music, they all talk about no face, no case. And, you know, you can get away with anything with a face mask on and everything. So the younger generation are now seeing them with their face masks on, and they're going to be like, oh, yeah, do you know what, I'm cool as well like them. I'll wear my face mask. That's setting a trend.
You as politicians do. You had any power at all. Let's just pretend that, which he doesn't, by the way, but that's another story, right? But let's just say you had someone in your family who lies as much to you as politicians do. You would kick them out of your life years ago. So why is it that people have this insane behavior? You know, the definition of insanity is repeating something and expecting a different result, right? That's the definition of insanity. Now, how can you go back to believing people who we know are compulsive liars? Why do people still fall for that trap? I don't get it.
It's unbelievable the lies people will actually believe.
Well, the problem is there's no willingness to listen. That's the problem. We have people who will blindly, they'll follow the idea of taking vaccines. They think wearing face masks is acceptable. They think now that you're capable of infecting police officers because the paper says so.
End of every month, there should be a big protest with all of these people that come together in small cities, and we should make the effort of getting there and documenting it ourselves.
I personally think at the moment with the way they've worked up there, it's been totally counterproductive protesting, totally counterproductive. People will get. I would question whether it's that hostile, the air at the moment, whether it would possibly become violent. Because you give for all the bullshit they're sending out at the moment that will wake people up, it will send tenders to brainwash people deeper down that brainwash hole. And i.e. anger.
And let them beat innocent people.
I'm telling you now, it will get violent. I know for a fact. You can just tell with the air.
And if these people that come there and get angry at people in that situation, let them hit each other, let them try and hit someone and go absolutely mental at them, because we all know to stay peaceful.
Oh yeah, it's always saying that, Russ. But then you've got the Bournemouth Echo that can take pictures and spin it however they like, can't you? You got like you said at the start, it's got to be a bit more clever, haven't you?
Yeah, true.
I do think protests up the line is something we definitely can't forget about. But I think right at this moment in time, I think they've whipped up the atmosphere so hostile that I honestly don't think it would do any favours at all in any demonstration for a few weeks, I think, at least.
Yeah, I think at the moment you'd struggle to get to a place, never mind demonstrate. But it's not just that. I think, you know, the hostility in the air at the moment. All you have to do is look at the comments of people and how, you know, and how they react to it. And, you know, but I mean, even just before they were talking about us infecting police officers, the Echo was putting out headlines about how anybody walking around without a face mask is a potential murderer, basically.
Everyone thinks of V for Vendetta and everyone's just going to be piling onto Parliament. They're all going to jump, everyone's going to jump to Parliament and they're going to be fined and dandy the next day. It will not. Demos, protests are great for spreading awareness, great for uniting the towns, but they are never a solution and they never will be. And the behind the scenes work, like what we're setting up with like a social media commenting team, just loads of little things behind the scenes, encouraging businesses not to comply and all this stuff behind the scenes and other little ideas that I won't mention. These are the things that are going to get us out of this bullshit. The demos. And I think, I'm not sure if Sven come up to this one. We went to Trafalgar Square on the 26th of September, I believe it was. I think there was about 20,000 people there that day. We had the numbers that day, and if you were outside London, you would never have even heard of that protest. I was asking people in Bournemouth, do you hear about the protest in London the other day? And they hadn't even heard of it. 1,000 people. We've encouraged a couple of businesses to go against the rules. To be honest, one of the guys who was from Happy Brother Chris, I'm pretty sure would have done it anyway without our encouragement. But with the letters and the correspondence that he's had with the council, he has basically forced the council to admit that they cannot enforce government guidance. Now, if we had teams of people encouraging other businesses to do that and other local media...
on the 30th.
Well, these are the things that are going to be, not the demos, not the protests. People have got to get the protest things out of their head.
Well, Italy, they've just over, 40,000 cafes and restaurants have reopened? Well, listen, right, let's remember one thing without me going into a history lesson. Let's go back in history a little bit, right? In the space of a few years, you had in 1913... the Federal Reserve Act, which privatised the American federal state. In other words, what happened was the government from then on in had to borrow money from a bank called the Federal Reserve. Then you had in 1914 the outbreak of World War I, which was sponsored by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Then you had in 1917 the Balfour Declaration. And the Balfour Declaration was done in a building that was right next to the double-decker bus that got blown up on 7/7 with Tavistock written on the front. Right? That was 1917. That was when the Brits gave Palestine to the Israelis. And then in 1918, a year later, you had the rollout of the Spanish flu. So in the space of 5 years, you had world events that have formed everything that we know right to this day. So that's 100 years roughly. Right? With 2021, that was all up to 1918. We've not even hit the prohibition in America yet and all that sort of stuff that came later. So you can just see when we talk about resets, that was a major one back then. Lots of things happen that people forget about now because they're in the history books.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's formed the playing field that we have now, right? This is the thing. 2 generations, 3 generations, boom, done. Same with this. When my daughter becomes a grandma and her grandkids, they ain't gonna know this. What we're talking about now, we'll be dead and buried, mate.
Yeah.
I always remember something that these always stuck in my head. You can forget a generation of knowledge in 70 years. So you can't hear your granddad's story because you won't be old enough to understand it, or he's dead, or whatever. And you cannot pass on that level of knowledge. So they can pretty much get away with anything past 70 years.
You can continually write history as history's going on. Right? And by the time you've clicked on and it might be a bit dodgy, you're dead. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. That's the way it works. That's why any history books, you've got to look at them and really think about and go, hang on a minute, who wrote it? You know, behind every author, there's a publisher. Behind every publisher, there's an investor. Behind every investor, there's a bank. Behind every bank, there's a Rothschild or a Rockefeller or a Soros or whatever their names are nowadays. right? And then behind them, there's Bilderberg groups and fucking clubber, excuse my language. I said I wasn't going to swear. Don't cut that out, Mike, because I'm getting on a roll, right? Then you've got like Club of Rome and all that sort of stuff, right? And it's all so interwoven and connected that by the time you figure a bit of it out, your head will explode. Be kind to each other, keep your side of the street clean, and that's where it starts. That's where you can create a change. But going out on the street and shouting at people or whatever, or demonstrating, will work for a shock effect, but actually getting things changed works differently, and it's got to go the other way. It's got to go inwards. That's where your God is. It's in here. It's not out there.
I'm starting to think, to be honest, this with obviously the hostilities with the protesting, and pretty much most people do agree that it's probably not a good time to demonstrate. It kind of forces people to do stuff in the background. For me, that's one of the things I've kind of moaned at a little bit the last sort of 7-8 months since we started. Be more done behind the scenes, like people may need to write emails to businesses, or even just an email to someone. I don't know, someone's challenged you in a shop about a mask. Write an email to the supermarket or something, and
little things. Little things, mate. It's like the old saying, don't look out for the elephant in the room. Look out for the little ants. They're the ones that are creating all the mayhem. They're the bits that you look at. The elephant is the obvious bit, right? And that's the thing. So we have to be just as subtle as they are with us. You've probably sat in GCHQ.
What do you mean? What's that?
GCHQ was the listening post for the British Secret Services. It's in Cheltenham. If you look up GCHQ, it's a fascinating place. They can hear everything.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
That's why
they can hear literally everything.
Emails and numbers.
Yeah, if you fart, mate, they'll know about it.
I love it. I just farted.
They'll know about it.
Of opposites, when they say something, it's something. Is it really that? That's what I was saying.
That's right.
Unless you're a proper tech guy or a proper computer geek, how do you really know that it's encrypted? Like, generally.
You don't. You just trust it. No, you trust it. It's like when you go out and buy cough syrup from the chemist. How do you really know what's in that? You don't. You read the label. It should work after 3 days or whatever it is, and then you take it. You don't know as a parent if what you're giving your kid is okay, or if you're poisoning them in 20 years' time. You don't know that. Nobody knows that. Because the problem is, the people who do all the testing to make sure the medication is safe, well, they're in the same bed as the people who are earning all the billions off the pharmaceuticals in the first place.
Macbeth, the witches whipping up something. Do you understand? Some of these things that are inside of this vaccination, you think, this literally sounds like a witch's concoction. People would be burnt at the stake if they tried making something like this back in the day.
It has actually got 2 lethal injection ingredients, and I'm not blagging with that. I've looked it up, and if you look the lethal injection over in America that brings on cardiac arrest, 2 out of the 3 ingredients that are used in that are in the vaccine, in the Pfizer vaccine.
Yeah. Called Pfizer. Another thing worth remembering, right? There's a thing called corporate consolidation, and what that means is, when you look at all these different companies, whether they're called Pfizer, Glaxo, Nestle, and all these things, Bayer in Germany, whatever, they are actually, the higher up the levels you go, they're all together. They just have different subsidiaries almost. It's a bit like, I'll use an analogy. If I own a fruit stall at a fruit market, I'll be selling lemons, apples, and pears. Now, you'll see a lemon, you'll see an apple, you'll see a pear, 3 different fruits. But guess what? I'm the one that cashes in because it's my stall. I own it all. So it doesn't matter. You might not like lemons. Mike might, though. But you still buy from my stall because you like apples. Mike might not like apples, but you're both coming to me. See what I mean? And that's how it works on a grander scale. When you look at these big companies, they all have nice logos and stuff, and it all looks grandiose. But at the end of the day, they're all in it together. Like all the media outlets, like all the politicians and political parties, and all those things, they're all in it together, all of them.
We are 99%. We are 99%.